Tonight, an appeals court hears arguments in a crucial legal battle between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom, both sides vying for control of National Guard troops sent to respond to immigration protests in Los Angeles.
He did a national order, which, by the way, is the point about this being you're sitting next. It's not unique to California.
It is essential that this injunction be stayed, otherwise lives and property will be at risk.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome to West Coast Wrap. I'm Alex Savage. This legal battle centers on whether the president has the authority to deploy National Guard troops without the governor's consent. The Trump administration argues the troops were needed to stop violence and vandalism. California leaders say the mobilization only escalated tensions during anti-ICE protests. KTVU's political reporter Greg Lee has more tonight on this court hearing that unfolded earlier today in San Francisco.
Governor Gavin Newsom et al. Versus President Donald J. Trump et al.
Inside this courtroom in San Francisco, lawyers for the state of California and the Trump administration made their arguments in front of a federal appeals panel, the latest chapter of the legal battle between Governor Newsom and the president. At issue, Mr. Trump's deployment of some 4,000 California National Guard troops in L.A. without the governor's consent amid ongoing protests of immigration enforcement.
It interferes with the president's commander-in-chief powers based on an erroneous interpretation of the applicable statute. It upends the military chain of command. It gives state governors veto power over the president's military orders.
Every day that this order remains in effect, it is causing harm to our nation's broader democratic tradition of separation of the military from civilian affairs.
The three-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals and the attorneys all appeared remotely. Last week, District Court Judge Charles Breyer ruled in favor of California, calling Trump's actions illegal and returned control of the Guard back to Newsom. Within hours, the Ninth Circuit blocked the lower court ruling and kept the Guard under Trump's control until they could hear the case.
The theory that Donald Trump can unilaterally decide to militarize the streets of America. It happens to be in L.A. now. It will be in your city next. He did a national order, which, by the way, is the point.
If we didn't have the National Guard on call and ready, they would rip Los Angeles apart.
Trump's lawyers pointed to his authority under Title 10, which says, in part, he can federalize a state's National Guard in a rebellion, danger of rebellion, or if the president is unable to execute federal laws.
Violent riots in Los Angeles constitute a rebellion against the authority of the United States. Those guardsmen are necessary on the ground today to prevent breaches of the federal buildings, to protect ICE officers.
For the first time in our nation's history, defendants federalized thousands of members of the state National Guard in circumstances where none of those factual predicates exist, and they circumvented the governor.
DOJ lawyers also reiterated their argument that the courts do not have a role in questioning the president's judgment. The panel, made up of 2 Trump appointees and 1 appointed by former President Biden, both sides speaking in stark terms when urging the court to rule in their favor.
Commend to the court, it is essential that this injunction be stayed, otherwise lives and property will be at risk.
It would allow defendants to continue diverting thousands of guardsmen away from critical work at the state level, including wildfire prevention and drug interdiction. It would allow defendants to further escalate tensions and the risk of violence.
The president's attorneys said if the court rules in favor of Governor Newsom, they will immediately appeal to the Supreme Court. In San Francisco, Greg Lee, KTVU, Fox 2 News.
All right, for more perspective, we're joined live tonight by UCLA School of Law lecturer Benjamin Rad. Thank you so much for the time tonight, Professor. We appreciate it. The attorney representing the Trump administration today in court essentially argued that the president has broad authority and discretion to mobilize the military, including a state's National Guard. And he raised the question of whether the courts even had a say on such a decision by a president. How strong do you think this case was that was laid out by the administration?
Yeah, this is consistent with the position that the Trump Justice Department has made with regards to the power of the judicial branch to review acts of the presidency. So we've seen President Trump in the last few weeks when he's been posting to social media complaining about judicial oversight, pointing out that really the judges who are unelected lack this authority, that they're undermining and weakening his Article 2 powers under the Constitution. So it's a consistent case that the administration's been making, but it's not a novel argument. It's one that the Supreme Court will ultimately have to reconcile.
All right, let's talk about the case laid out by the attorney representing the state of California at this hearing today, who argued that the Trump administration never showed evidence of a rebellion that was unfolding in Los Angeles that would require National Guard troops to respond. And this all sort of raised a really important question here, and that is whether the president is actually required to lay out a rationale for federalizing the National Guard. How do you think the Ninth Circuit is going to handle that question?
Yeah, it looks like, so they expressed some skepticism at the state's argument about President Trump not having that authority or not having shown the need, and therefore overruling the wishes of the state governor. Yeah, obviously, I should say obviously, but it was clear that the two Trump appointees definitely felt that way. And Judge Sung cited a 1823 Supreme Court precedent that basically said rules, that holds in favor of Trump and the Justice Department on this issue. So it's going to be challenging for them to make the case, despite what the district court Judge Breyer held last week.
Another issue that was at play during the hearing today was the fact that the president mobilizing California's National Guard, he did so over the objections of Governor Newsom. The federal statute that was used by the Trump administration says that deployment must go, quote, through the governor. So the question on the table is, does that mean the governor has to sign off on that deployment or just needs to be notified, which was the case last week?
Yeah, on its face, it appears, the section that says going through the governor implies that it's coordinated through the governor's office, meaning that the governor plays a role in, the deployment or in overseeing the National Guard troops, but it doesn't mean that the governor needs to give his or her blessing to the deployment of those troops. So at least that's how I read it, and I think that's how the court may end up seeing it as well, that ultimately the president, under that Title 10 statute of the U.S. Code, does have that authority. The question then turns on whether or not what we've been witnessing here in Los Angeles rises to the level of rebellion or insurrection to the extent that it would trigger that code, that act, and thereby justify it. I think that might be the sticking point, that there's still room to debate, and maybe the judges will address that issue.
How much do you think the conditions on the ground in L.A. at this moment and over the past week or so are going to factor in for the justices here in the Ninth Circuit?
I think the justices the judges will look at, what they've seen. They'll look at the evidence. They'll look at footage. They'll look at whatever testimony's there, and get a sense of whether or not local authorities were lacking control or the ability to control the crowd. In other words, was the mob, if you will, impeding the administration of federal justice and federal law, with the ICE agents carrying out the raids that they needed to and to fulfill their own objectives under the Department of Homeland Security. So it'll have to be shown that those agents were impeded, that the crowd and the protesters interfered, and that the local authorities simply were not in a position to restore order, and therefore that would justify it. So it's hard to see. I mean, being here, it's hard to say that was the case. Definitely the mayor didn't think so. Other officials thought it was fully under control. But again, this is the argument that the Trump team is making, and ultimately the Supreme Court might have to resolve this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question here. Is this headed to the Supreme Court? I mean, there seems to be a consensus that that's where this is going to have to be settled. How do you think that the High Court, if they do get this case, is likely to view the circumstances here and what unfolded? Obviously, a case that really kind of tests the limits of presidential authority.
What I think the Supreme Court will look at is the significance of whether or not, when the president is executing or having an order, essentially something that's part of the federal government, the executive branch, in this case, immigration enforcement raids, whether or not, if there's a hostile, and by hostile I mean a mayor or a governor that is of an opposing party or an opposing position that disagrees with and doesn't cooperate with, to what extent can the president, federalize the Guard and have the Guard carry out these orders? Now, Mayor Bass, Governor Newsom, they were not opposing or resisting any of this. However, at the same time, if the president feels that local law enforcement and local officials could not control the situation, the court might decide that, in situations like this, where the president doesn't have a lot of time to decide what to do and the lives of federal agents, in this case, ICE agents, were at stake also, that the court might decide that the president does have broad discretion in these matters. So it's likely, given where this court has ruled on many other issues of executive authority, might also favor the president on this one.
All right, well, we will wait to see what decision comes from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, a decision expected at some point later on this week. Thank you so much for the insight tonight, Benjamin Rad from UCLA. Good to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, tonight, a curfew is no longer in effect in downtown Los Angeles. Earlier today, Mayor Karen Bass lifted that curfew that was put in place last week following some violent clashes between protesters and law enforcement during protests over ICE operations. Mayor Bass says the curfew helped to protect businesses and suppress crime. Also today, LA County District Attorney Nathan Hochman announced charges against more protesters. One person accused of throwing a rock at a California Highway Patrol unit and trying to set it on fire could spend up to 20 years in prison if convicted.
You see behind me and throughout this entire county, law enforcement officers who are going to track down these criminals, arrest them, bring their cases to the U.S. attorney, to the district attorney, to the city attorney. We will then prosecute those cases, convict these individuals, and they will be punished. So I'm timing the warning to all those criminals out there who've committed the crimes. We're coming after you.
The FBI, ICE, and U.S. Attorney Bill Lassaley echoed those sentiments with a post on social media today. They added that people helping violent demonstrators could face trouble with the law.
Last week, we arrested an individual who was charged with conspiracy to commit and aiding and abetting civil disorders. These violent agitators put peaceful demonstrators at risk.
The FBI and our federal partners will continue to investigate individuals and organizations who are knowingly funding or committing acts of violence against law enforcement, as well as the destruction of property.
One man who says he was injured during Saturday's No Kings protest is now suing the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Sergio Espojo says the department's use of flashbangs injured his finger, forcing it to be amputated. His legal team is raising questions about law enforcement's use of force. The Sheriff's Department says it's unclear whether deputies were actually involved in Espojo's case. It's evaluating video from that protest as part of an internal review. And you can find extensive coverage on the Trump administration's ongoing immigration enforcement crackdown at our website. It's westcoastwrap.com. Our coverage there includes profiles of the judges who are now considering this legal battle between President Trump and California Governor Gavin Newsom over deployment of the National Guard. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, cameras rolling as a boxing match breaks out in the middle of a gas station parking lot. Tonight, why police say the crowds of onlookers made the matter even worse.
And in weather, here's our live camera down in Southern California, where we do have a warm forecast coming up for tomorrow. But the real heat, other parts of the West Coast, parts of Arizona, could be talking about temperatures approaching 115 degrees. We'll have more on the forecast coming up.
Not every day that you see a deputy lasso a suspect.
It was like a scene from the Old West, the unique way sheriff's deputies detained one man in Washington. Newly released video shows a dangerous scene unfolding in Surprise, Arizona, northwest of Phoenix. Investigators say a boxing match broke out in the middle of a large crowd that was gathered at a gas station parking lot on Sunday. You can see two women wearing boxing gloves throwing punches at each other. Surprise police say people in that crowd took advantage of the chaos and they began stealing from the gas station's convenience store. Officers tonight are now searching for anyone tied to that situation. 7 men have been indicted and charged in what's being called the largest jewelry heist in U.S. history. Federal prosecutors in Los Angeles say the thieves broke into a Brinks truck at a gas station along the Grapevine back in 2022. That truck was carrying gold, precious gems, and watches from a jewelry show in San Mateo down to Pasadena. This all happened while one of the guards was napping and the other was getting food. The thieves got away with up to $100 million worth of jewelry. Some of those jewels were recovered just yesterday. Tonight, the manhunt goes on for the Washington man who's accused of killing his 3 young daughters. Today, authorities released these images of what Travis Decker could look like as he hides out from law enforcement. He's been on the run now for more than 2 weeks. Officers are in the far reaches of the Enchantments region of the Cascades, hoping to find him and bring him to custody.
We're focused on the areas of our county that are most likely to be accessed or accessible from the areas where Decker is known to have been because the crime happened, or where he's believed to have been most recently.
Snohomish and King counties are assisting in this manhunt with air resources, and the Army National Guard has been helping to transport search teams into the backcountry. Sheriff's deputies in Washington used an unconventional technique to detain a man accused of threatening his parents with a chainsaw. Fox 13's AJ Janavel shows us how those deputies used a lasso to end a potentially dangerous standoff.
Put the chainsaw down put that down.
One of the males was chasing his father with a chainsaw, so not every day that you see a deputy lasso a suspect.
The situation seems funny, like a clip from a Western, but it could have gone much worse. Pierce County deputies arrived at this call in Roy Saturday for a man with a chainsaw threatening his parents. Deputies are ready to act, arming less than lethal rounds to catch the suspect, loading 40mm beanbags into a shotgun.
You know what this is? It's a beanbag gun. It's going to hurt when I shoot you with it.
While a 32-year-old man is in a defensive position in a pond with a weapon. But thinking outside the box, Pierce County Sheriff's deputies brought a safe end to this dangerous situation.
I'm sure there's not anything in the police academy that's like, hey, if you're in a situation, bust out your lasso, cowboy.
No, they definitely don't teach us how to use lassos in the police academy. And I think what's great about Pierce County is we can kind of pick and choose what kind of tools and instruments we want to carry inside of our car as long as they're approved. And this particular deputy works out in our mountain detachment and has had to deal with a lot of animals, like large animals.
This 40-minute standoff ended with no one hurt.
Come on.
And the suspect in cuffs to get help. But Deputy Carly Capetto with the Pierce County Sheriff's Office tells me what happened Saturday highlights a continuing issue with mental health.
But a lot of these families, their child will go to the hospital and receive a day or two of services and be released back. There's not a long-term solution for some of these people that are suffering from significant mental health illnesses. And a lot of these mental health illnesses only progress and get worse. And we need to come up with a solution as a society, or our response is going to be the continued response where we have to problem solve through these horrific situations and attempt to get everything under control in a safe manner just to have them come back and repeat.
Reporting in Pierce County, AJ Janavel, Fox 13 News.
All right, let's talk about our weather here, because people in some parts of the Southwest will not get a break from dangerously hot conditions anytime soon. This is a live look tonight at downtown Phoenix as the sun is setting. It is still hot here, one of the places where an extreme heat warning has been extended all the way through this Friday. For more, let's bring in KTVU's chief meteorologist, Mark Tamayo, who is tracking the conditions that could push temperatures up past 115 degrees later this week.
Yeah, that's right, Alex. Wow. In fact, extreme heat, not only extreme in terms of the temperature, but also in terms of the duration. So as you mentioned, this is lasting for quite some time. Take a look at some of the highs from this afternoon. Triple digits for Tucson, Phoenix, Palm Springs, 115 degrees. Las Vegas, 105. Temperatures heating up for portions of Northern California, but still not in the triple digits for Redding or Sacramento just yet. As we check out the extreme heat warning in place for the Phoenix area, as Alex mentioned, through Friday. So you can see these temperatures, the temperature range 108 to possibly 117 degrees. And then actually out toward portions of Southern California, we have a heat advisory for tomorrow. Temperatures, some areas approaching the 90s. Now, in terms of the Phoenix forecast, as you can see here, overnight temperatures by 8 o'clock could already be approaching 90 degrees, kind of a big launching pad here with those temperatures heating up. So this was a scene in Phoenix today, 110 degrees, the average 105. So still another round of triple digits for tomorrow. And then in the San Francisco Bay Area, temperatures actually a bit more pleasant, only 65 degrees in San Francisco. A bit warmer, though, as you do work your way inland, some more 90s. And then in Seattle, temperature is 73 degrees, some cloud cover, and they're talking about some rain for tonight into tomorrow morning. Current numbers out there right now, Phoenix is still 107 degrees. San Francisco, 62. Some 70s for Portland and up in Seattle. As we check out to the satellite right now, in terms of the cloud cover and the shower chances, you can see this band approaching Washington for tonight into tomorrow morning. And then still some lingering scattered showers, as you can see parts of Colorado. View out toward the Denver area, showing you some scattered showers and some cloud cover moving out of the area. So here is the plan for tomorrow. Some rain up in Seattle, clearing for, that's basically for the morning hours, decreasing activity into the afternoon. Clearing for San Francisco. It's a warm forecast for Los Angeles. And we have that heat warning, as we talked about, in the Phoenix area. We're showing you this, the forecast models. You do put it in motion, and there you can see the clouds and the rain up there, but still looks like a warm to hot forecast as you do work your way to the south. Some more neighborhoods for you coming up. You can see Olympia, Washington, 67 degrees. San Jose in the Bay Area, 83. Scottsdale, Arizona, 112 degrees. And as we check out the forecast over the next few days, once again, Seattle, they have the rain chance for tomorrow, especially for the morning hours. By Friday, another chance of some rainfall. Southern California, it's a warm day tomorrow. Heating up in Denver, interesting by Friday, 102 degrees. But Alex, as you can see here, extremely hot temperatures. And the problem is lasting for quite some time in portions of Arizona. And that'll continue to be a big concern over the next few days.
Main issue. Okay, Mark, thank you. Coming up tonight here on West Coast Wrap, people in Arizona rethinking the idea of sustainable farming. Tonight, see how they're saving water and cutting emissions at the same time. 7 western states appear to be at a stalemate in negotiations over the allocation of water from the Colorado River. The states have until June of 2026 to come to a new agreement, but a divide has grown between upper basin states, Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming, and the lower basin states, California, Nevada, and Arizona. A combination of drought conditions and overuse has left the river with less water, and negotiations have shown the upper basin states don't want to give up their water or reduce their use. But lower basin states say they're running out. Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs says Arizona has done its part in water conservation, and it's time for upper basin states to make compromises too.
Have already put real water on the table for our lower basin proposal, and we will make sure that our neighbors in the upper basin do not shirk their responsibilities when it comes to reducing their water use to protect the river.
The closer that deadline gets, the more likely it is the federal government will have to get involved in coming to a deal. What these states decide on will affect water allocation here in the West for the next 100 years. All right, finally tonight, a new desert fish farm in Arizona is pitching a sustainable alternative to ocean-caught seafood. Mainstream is growing barramundi, a tropical species native to Australia. The company says fish farms not only cut down on international shipping emissions, but water from their artificial ponds can also be used to irrigate Bermuda grass that will become hay for dairy cows.
The water runoff coming out of our systems has a level of nitrate in it, so it's essentially liquid fertilizer.
Industry experts say fish farms are the future, as the commercial fishing industry is already facing problems from overfishing and pollution. All right, that does it for West Coast Wrap tonight. We appreciate you watching as always, and a quick reminder before we head out, you can stay up to date on all the big stories we're covering across the West at our website, westcoastwrap.com, and stream our shows on your smart TV with the free Fox Local app. Have a great night.